everyone. Welcome to the Institute of Armenian Studies, for maybe the single person who doesn't know me. I'm Shushan Karapetyan, the director of the Institute. It's a huge honor and privilege to have Levon Abrahamian with us today. He's a cultural anthropologist and heads the Department of Cultural Anthropology at the Institute of Archaeology and Ethnography in the National Academy of Sciences in the Republic of Armenia. He received his PhD in anthropology from the Institute of Ethnography, Academy of Sciences of the USSR in 1978. He was elected a member of the National Academy of Sciences of Armenia in 2006. He's the author of more than 150 articles and 5 books, including Armenian Folk Arts, Culture and Identity, and Armenian Identity in a Changing World, which he used actually to teach a class at UCLA years ago when I was a student there, and I've used to teach in classes since then. I think he's taught at UC Berkeley and a number of other universities. Today we're going to talk about From Ethnography to Anthropology, a survey of a social discipline in Armenia. We're so pleased you can be here with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shushan, for this kind presentation. I am very grateful that I am here, and including the conference on Parajanev. And today I will try to make an outline of a discipline in Armenian ethnography, and I will try to do this just following the attitude of the discipline towards the problem of contemporaneity. So, because to speak about just ethnography in Armenia, it will take much more time. And ethnography in Armenia formed as a discipline nearly the same way as it was in Europe. So it was late 19th century with one difference, that Armenia had no colonies, so it was Volkskunde and without Völkerkunde, as I usually do. And the name of the discipline in Armenian is Azgagrutsun. When they were making the calc, translating ethnography, it was usually in Armenia, all these disciplines are translated from Russian at that time, actually. And the word ethnos was already occupied in Armenia. For the Greek term ethnos in Armenia has its original meaning, which means hetanos, which is pagan. So if they'll do ethnography, it will be the writing of the pagans, and so it was something else. So they decided to have ask instead. And ask is very close to the Latin natio, and so they did Azgagrutsun, with many consequences, by the way, for today. Just one of them, because ask is also something that is present in nowadays Armenian, and Armenian see this as a worldview. And because it's the same time when the nationalism and the idea of nation in the European sense of this word was established in Europe, and also in the 19th century, 18th, 19th century. And they also took the name, the word ask in it. So it was something like Azgagrutsun and Azgainakanutsun. in this is nationalism, but in a neutral sense of this word. In Armenia, there are two words, azgainakanutsun as this one, which is nationalism without attitude to it, just something about nations. And the other, azgamolutsun, which is a nationalism in its negative form. But now azgainakanutsun is also taking the meaning more of this negative connotation. But the ask is there, and we have ask in everyday language. We have azganund, it is the surname. We have that's big family, ask. So this word is present in everyday language, and is pulling all these terms to family. So in a sense, it's another topic, of course, but I just wanted to show you how difficult was to navigate, you see, inside the terms in Armenia by specialists. For our when you say nation, for natia, for example, in Russia, then or ethnography, it's something that is a new word, and that you can do anything you want to do with this and understand as you want. But in Armenia, when you say ask, you have this family in the back of your head, and this means that our, see, instead of nation state, we have actually a family state until now. Just an example, when a taxi driver in Armenia, in Yerevan, and they are the best interlocutors. Is it there? I'm doing this?
No, Adam is up here left.
Yeah, and taxi the drivers in general are extremely interesting interlocutors in Yerevan, and great informants for ethnographers. Yeah. They are not professional mainly drivers. They are different profession now driving us on taxis. And when you ask what is your profession, I said that I'm Azga graduate. I said, oh, I also love our nation. so it's considering something else. Just a very difficult problem for anthropologists, by the way, for ethnographers. And there's immediately the point, the problem, whether we are modern nation or an ancient nation. For when they created the idea of nation in the 19th century, in the 18th, 19th century, as in Europe, in Armenia, being a rather old nation, we are doomed to be primordialists, actually, as many old nations have this priority, not priority, but I don't know what. And so we really don't know. In Armenia, you will find the greater part of population and even specialists thinking that we are really they are primordialist or perennialist. It's better to say. Actually, this is also a special theme, and I myself am constructivism, but I'm going back to the 5th century when some just to show you all the spectrum of our discipline in Armenia, what we are now working on. It's that just in few words that there are different scholars who really think Armenian nation taking place perhaps closer to the modern nation, but already in the 5th century. And I'm speaking about those primordialists who say that well go until Noah, you know. So and trying to find what is Armenian gene, the gene of Armenian nation. It's extremely popular theme in Armenia, by the way, and it's very difficult to speak with people trying to explain that there are no such genes. That is quite another thing. But even educated men would say, "Oh, Armenian gene," and that even there was a radio talk program, Hayut Esak. So it's some biological thing. I don't know. As for me, I am just using the 5th century as the century when the several people whom you know perhaps. It's Mashtot, then Hurenazi, then they're taking Christianity as a state religion. All this happened just during this time, and all those were reforms. So each of these persons were doing some projects in today's language, and it became a kind of a byproduct of their activities. And that's why I'm saying that I'm a constructivist who is dealing with something which resembles very much this the nation. I'm not alone. There are several serious scholars as well, because they see that many things coincide with what they are studying for the 19th century. But I'm not speaking. I am constructivist of this time, and usually they are primordialists. So, this brings to the problem where we are from, and who are we, and mainly what is making us like this. And this was not, I'm not speaking about today, but about the 19th century when this discipline was formed. And what they had to do, it was to study what Armenians do every day, to see why we are like this. So it was actually an ethnography of contemporaneity of the late 19th, early 20th century. So they were doing just field work, and this was what they were describing and thinking, and that really it was a very good field work of modernity of that time. And as all these researches took place not only here, but mainly in this ethnographic journal, Azgagrakan Handes, which had 26 volumes beginning in Shushid and in Tbilisi, in Tiflis. You can find very interesting ethnographic descriptions of contemporaneity of this time. So they were just as today's anthropologists who were going to the field and making their studies. Just one example, it's a wedding ritual and slaughtering the bull. It's a photograph of this time. A very interesting ritual. I'll just say some few words about this. You see how the bull is slaughtered, and the Zurnachi, one of the main figures of this ritual, is putting his foot on it, trampling it, and then the bridegroom is doing the same, as if he is the one who slaughtered the bull. And here you have this very ancient, you see, layer of mythology which goes back to the visions of and the images of Mitra, who is just doing the same gesture you can find in all the Western Mitraism, which was the base, one of the bases of Christianity. That's just what the in 19th century the bridegroom was doing what Mitra did in ancient times. So it's but of course they didn't know this. I'm saying now today's today's the exploration of this ritual, and more than that, the etymology of the word "ton," feast, goes back according to Acharyan, and it was not changed during all these years. The new analysis also showed that this is a right etymology. Goes back to the slaughtering of a horned animal, young animal, and making sacrifice and giving it to everybody. So it was an Armenian word which is present, where is present one of the most archaic rites of sacrificial, and more than that, it's one of the main parts of traditional wedding, the killing, slaughtering the bull, Yezen Mortek. Yezen is in Old Armenian, it's not ox as now they use it, but it's bull. And nowadays this also exists in the modern wedding, but it's the day when they go and buy meat for the feast. But in the villages you can find it until now. We were looking for this ritual and found it for the book Armenian. It was Armenian Folk Arts, Culture and Identity. There's a very good photograph, and there was a feast around it. And Gayane Shagoyan, in her book 7 Days and 7 Nights, the panorama of Armenian wedding, has also a chapter about this, by the way. So this happened just there. The ethnographers, and there are few ethnographers, but there were very educated ones as well. They had their education in Europe, in European universities, in Russian universities, not very many, but there were prominent ones. And all these volumes were published by Levon Lalayan, who also got his education somewhere abroad. And but mainly the material, the field, they were not going to the field, and there's also a problem. But some educated people from villages were doing this research. They were sending them the questionnaires, and they were making this field work. And now we have many gaps there. That's why, because they were not professional ethnographers, and the many of them, Lalayan wrote under his name. So they said, what a great ethnographer he is. But those are teachers, some educated people somewhere in the villages. So this happened just at that time, and they were writing about it and describing everything. It was a field work in the field, typical field work and study of contemporaneity of the 19th century. But then it began the magical formula. If you have this, so if they were doing this, so we should do the same. After them, all the generations of Armenian ethnographers were studying at this ethnography, asking elders, trying to find something from, I don't know from where, from newspapers, from archives, but about this time. So the time was going on, but they were doing the contemporaneity of the of the late 18th, early 20th century, which became a kind of a golden age of ethnography, and but more than that, you know, my colleague Artak Dabaran just analyzed 73 dissertations defended in our institute, and 45 of them had this magical formula. Oh, it was written in the preface, so in other words. That was a kind of a paradigm of salvage, to save your culture. So, and which was the best time was this magical time. And this created also the idea of national this ideals, so that people were looking for Armenian national values just to this time. And you know, I also would cite Gayane, because we work in the same department, and so I'm a witness of this. So you nearly every week you can find a journalist or a TV journalist, I don't know, who will come and ask which are our national values and what we have lost now, and going back to this time, and that as for, and when I was a witness when she says that the wedding was not just universal at that time, but there were many differences between regions. There were, of course, some concrete and established schemes, but it's not so just you see the same. This is becoming a universal thing, and in the time of globalism, and especially in authoritarian states, by the way, when you have to do everything like in one way. So history will be just one textbook, and the wedding ritual will be just one wedding ritual. But why? Because you have now a system of wedding salons, so they can find it, and there are video operators, that's the cameramen who were doing it. So everybody was looking to do the same thing. Now it's a new trend, and this is also, I'm saying this not because Gayane is my wife, but she's also my colleague. And fortunately, some of the organizers of the modern weddings are reading her book and organizing weddings according to some regional, so going back to the 19th century, but of this region. So it's becoming much more interested and diverse. But you have this idea, and I will come back to it in the end of my presentation. For this is a general thing. What is the real Armenian? What is the real Armenian? And they are looking just to this period. And then the moment comes in the 20s, 1920s, when this study of contemporaneity, see, it was going opposite to how the Soviet reality should evolve. And for you are going, it's a progress. You are going to socialism, later to communism, and the ethnographers are describing something something very, you see, of the old times. And in the late 20s was a very fierce criticism of regional studies. For before this, people were just doing the same thing that did the founders of Armenian ethnography. And when they are these regional anthropologists, and I don't know, not just anthropologists, but all the educated people who read this journal, and even without the questionnaire, they were studying the customs, I don't know what, of their region. So all in detail. And it became the provincial or regional the ethnography, actually. And Sergei Толstov, who was many years director of the Institute of Ethnography in Moscow, just began his fight with all these regional ethnographers, and some of them were even persecuted, I don't know. But in Armenia, this person, Stepan Lisitsan, just in these years was the head of the regional ethnographic association. But he was safe at that time, for he already finished his position in 28, as far as I remember, just before this criticism. Oh, because I think that there were not very many professional ethnographers at that time in Armenia, so they were either so noble that they didn't write about him, or they were unaware of what is going on in Moscow. So this was the reason that Stepan Lisitsan was not persecuted. As for the direction of the studies, at that time, evolutionism was the only actually canonical direction of the ethnography, and in its Marxist interpretation, and it was the main trend in the Soviet Union and in Armenian ethnography as well. Actually, all the Armenian ethnographers of the old generation were evolutionists. Only one exception, it's Manuk Aberian, who got his education in Germany and wrote his dissertation there, and that's why he was following mythological school. And those who were following Manuk Aberian also were following mythological school without knowing that. But mainly it was evolutionism, and it was even, in the 1932, there was a special conference organized in Moscow, and there were so it was the discussion of the disciplines, the social disciplines, and this was the end of the wonderful school of Lev Sternberg, who invented 10 proverbs of ethnography, so something which was much ahead of the AAA Codex of Ethics, by the way. In any case, it was the end of this school, but these party leaders from the discipline decided that ethnography and archaeology as well are auxiliary disciplines only, historical disciplines. And until now, it's considered like this, and in our educational system, all the you know the in the first the grade they are studying the the what the beginning of man, and all the all the prehistoric and this kind of ethnography and archaeology. Then they were going further, then to feudal times, and were ending with scientific communism, which was so. You have this Marxist ladder of all the levels that you have to pass to come to the last last step, and after the fall of communism, all the specialists turned to become political scientists or culturologists, which was another interesting trend in the late Soviet Union, which is not present in U.S., although they are beginning from the American anthropologist Leslie White from the Massachusetts University, and who is buried there. But the word culturology was invented by him, but was followed only in the Soviet Union in a specific way, you know. And until now, by the way, it's one of the say, lines of studying culture. What was interesting that actually ethnographers found some ways to study what was not allowed to study during the criticism of the regional anthropology. According to this original idea of De Beze, perhaps I don't know how it's spelled, they found some you see, allowed ways to study religion, for example. And it was as if you are studying survivals. And here is really a paradox. Edward Tyler, who invented this idea of survivals, it's his theory, and Malinowski, who denied survivals, because he said that it's something that is taking place in contemporaneity and not just something that was in ancient times. So you could have this evolutionist base and Malinowski's idea and study it, how it's taking place now, saying that it is survival. So the theory of survival gave opportunity for ethnographers to study, for example, religion in contemporaneity. Although they were not using, of course, they even never used Malinowski's name, for at that time he was considered to be you see, a very reactionist and neo-colonialism, and a father of some new British colonialism, something like this. But actually, it was his idea who helped them to survive as specialists as well. And as for the those who were looking for this to solve this is salvage ethnography, as I told you, they were going to villages, and the villagers, peasants, have also an interesting thing. There is that in Latin it's paganus, means first pagan, as it was with Hetanos there, and at the same time it's a peasants. So studying peasants, it was a kind of having your colonies. It was a inner colonialism when you were studying some exotic ancients, as and also a very interesting part of those who used survivals, so could do something during the Soviet time. This was, by the way, in Georgia as well, because both republics had the ethnography started in the 19th century. Because if you compare with Central Asia, it was a continuation of Soviet colonization. So it were specialists from Moscow and Leningrad who created the local national ethnography. And in the late 40s, the same Sergei Tolstoy now called to study Soviet contemporaneity, but the kolkhoz daily life. So not this pagan peasant life, but the kolkhoz life. So in Armenia, there are a little later were created two books by Vartumian in 56 and Vartumian and Karapetyan in 63, and they were really studying the collective farmers' contemporaneity, but it was a great thing, by the way, for we know now a lot of things from this period. And but as a result, it was very few books like this. Of course, it was under the source of this Marxist ideology in project, but you have really some field study of the Soviet farmers, collective farmers. But as a result, there are a lot of gaps, actually an absence of ethnographic data during the Soviet time, which presently my colleagues and I are trying to fill these gaps about the Soviet ethnography, the contemporaneity. At the same time, it's not that they were studying only 19th century. So in 80s, you can find several works dedicated to the contemporaneity of the nowadays and not of the 19th century. Well, one of these examples is this collective work on culture of life subsistence in Armenia, in rural Armenia, and another case with my colleague Ripsime Pikichan, we made some studies of in the town. So it was a new wave actually from village to town, and this means contemporaneity, a real contemporaneity. And what happened later, it was 1988, and the Karabakh movement began. If you know now, perhaps what the Karabakh movement is, most to you, it was the mass movement in Karabakh to rejoin with Armenia, and it got this great rallies that lasted for until 91, and but unfortunately there were wars, and today this problem does not exist actually for others. For all the Karabakhs were expelled. It was ethnic cleansing quite recently, the last year. But at that time it was a radical turn to contemporaneity. we had to study what is going on. And here's a cartoon. I'm a cartoonist, by the way, so it's my cartoon. what was taking place there, and what we were studying. It was a time when you see the monuments were dismantled of Lenin, and here's Lenin is sadly looking from his mausoleum what is going on. so it's all the times of the 90s, and different things we had to study. As for me, I was studying. It was my first dissertation, actually the only. It's on the archaic festival and mythology, based on the Australian Aboriginal culture, actually. And but I had to study what is happening now. So our field became the squares and streets of Yerevan. That's first, and everyday life of the protesting people, and what I described as if the Ur festival, the most ancient festival. I tried to reconstruct it in this book. Suddenly I saw in the square of Yerevan. It was a kind of a archaic festival, and the painter Hakop Hakopian just described this in his work. Actually, he used my articles as well. That's why it's a festival. And then we had to go to problems that we were not studying. If you go to the 19th century, it's now the word identity arose, which is now criticized in a sense, but it's very, very actual for Armenia now. The other colleague of mine, Harutsun Marutsan, who was studying this rural interior, and then had to study the posters of the Karabakh movement, and it's a big volume which he published. It's the volume number 1. So he also had to change to contemporaneity, as you see. And Guyana is here, so I'm showing what she did with the wedding. Well, for the wedding turned to, as you remember, here was the bull, slaughtered bull, and she made the analysis of the modern wedding when the bridegroom and bride were killing. It's called the term is killing the cake. And also distributing it to everybody. It was a kind of a sacrifice. So it was you see, a transformation of the bull killing. So in her book, but she also had to come to the contemporaneity. It was the earthquake in Lennakan, and she already presented something, the memorialization and the anthropology of a disaster. So she began to do this kind of work, also contemporary. Oh, there were also another colleagues of ours. For Arasi Tadevosyan is presently doing the work on the anthropology of war, and he published already this book in Polish in Poland, and now it's translated in Armenian, and different things. I'm just making several examples to have time. Oh, excuse me, I'm taking too much time. So all these years we had to study contemporaneity. This is Gorbachev trying to do something with this Rubik, you know, with the republic. It's Armenian Republic, but they wanted to stay with the red Soviet original. Oh, this cartoon was published many times, and you see this is a circus pyramid. It's Karl Marx, Lenin, Engels, Stalin, Khrushchev, Brezhnev, Andropov, and Gorbachev doing this impossible thing. And this is the jester, the national jester with the flags of the Soviet republics, who is ruining this all. And we had to study this, and we were trying to do this now. And in 2018 also, when there was a Velvet Revolution, this is my reaction to Velvet Revolution. And also we did a study with Gayane. We published even an anthropology of this revolution. Yeah, in English, by the way. Another studies also, you know already from the report of Gayane. This is the study of even, I'm accentuating on everyday life during the Stalin purges. Here you just can see the photograph. It's from the book in Armenian. In English, it was not yet published. You see the faces destroyed. Those were the enemies of the people, and also something that and another urban anthropology, and I will tell you something during the Armenian lecture. And migration and refugees now it's taking all the time from today's anthropologists, my colleagues from my department, for we have now this great wave of refugees from Karabakh, and they need to be studied as well. And Shushan, it's taking too much time, so I will not speak about this. What is very interesting that during the field work in these years, see, it was the field work that brought to new trends, new directions in anthropology. Not that they were studying these new directions, my colleagues and I perhaps, I don't know, but they were doing field works, and field work brought to these new trends. I don't know how. Only one example, a work, it's a book, Stories on Poverty. The group of our colleagues were doing the work for different projects, mainly for the World Bank. And in the coordinator of this project was our friend and colleague Nora Dadvik, and so she made the crew, the command of ethnographers who were doing their projects from anthropologists, and not from different types of people, as usually it's done by the World Bank. So our anthropologists had opportunity to go to the field, because it was the time of the crisis, and the institute hadn't money to do this. And they had a good opportunity to have professional reports. But as a byproduct of these researches, this book was created, Stories on Poverty, which was really an interesting thing. For the first time, part of the book was the description of poverty that was coming to Armenia. And there were interviews, there were short descriptions, there were documents, and this kind of thing. The second part were articles by those who were collecting the material. And my afterward was using their reports, their articles, and the works of the first part. And instead of the content, it was the index. So you see, it was an open book. You could comment each part of it. It was a kind of a postmodern book. So it was the first postmodern book in anthropology in Yerevan, but it came from the field work, and not because we were so clever, sophisticated that knew this. And after 5 years, a new study was done, so it was at long something. The same persons were studied and seeing what is going on with the poverty. And these stories, it's stories patmutsunner in Armenian, is the same thing that the same word as we use for history. So this patmutsunner created patmutsun, actually. The stories created history in this sense. And I'll finish just with the institutions and names very shortly, so that that institute where we work was formed in 59, and on the base of these parts, in the department was called Department of Contemporary Anthropological Studies, but in Armenian it was called Department of Ethnology of Contemporaneity, and now we just changed it to Department of Cultural Anthropology. so you can see that there is a great spectrum of terms and of directions, but actually it was something like cultural anthropology, which we were doing from ethnography to anthropology with very great difficulty. Why? Because, as I told you, the social demand is just to go back to the ideal Armenian realities, to some utopian, Armenian genes and 19th and beginning of 20th century. So that is it. Okay. Thank you.